The Galactic distress call. The crystalline spires of Lumina City gleamed in the soft light of the twin suns, their iridescent surfaces refracting rainbows across the bustling streets below. On the uppermost floor of the tallest tower, first speaker Elara stood before a wall of holographic displays, her luminescent skin pulsing with a mix of curiosity and concern. "Another anomaly, Scion Zephyr?" she asked, her melodic voice carrying a hint of worry. The younger Lumina, his skin a deeper shade of blue, nodded as he manipulated the data streams with graceful gestures. "Yes, first speaker. Our long-range sensors have detected unusual gravitational disturbances in the outer reaches of our system. They don't match any known natural phenomena." Ilara's bioluminescent patterns shifted to a cautious yellow. The Lumina, a species of natural explorers and scientists, had mapped their star system extensively over millennia. Unknown phenomena were rare and often exciting, but something about this felt different. "Have you consulted the Galactic archives?" she inquired, her four eyes blinking in sequence. Zephyr's skin rippled with frustration. "Extensively, but there's no match for these readings. It's as if something is distorting space itself." Before Elara could respond, a piercing alarm shattered the serenity of the command center. Screens flickered and changed, showing a massive fleet of ships unlike anything the Lumina had ever encountered. Dark, angular vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it emerged from tears in the fabric of space. "By the cosmic harmony," Elara whispered, her skin paling to a ghostly white. "What are they?" The answer came in the form of searing beams of energy that lanced out from the alien ships, striking Lumina's orbital defense platforms. The peaceful race had maintained these platforms as a precaution, a holdover from ancient times when conflict was not unheard of. But against this onslaught, they may as well have been made of glass. "All channels," Elara commanded, her voice steady despite the fear pulsing through her body. "This is first speaker Elara. We are under attack by an unknown force. This is not a drill. Implement emergency protocols immediately." As the Lumina scrambled to respond to a threat they had never anticipated, the alien fleet pressed its advantage. Dropships pierced the atmosphere, descending on population centers with terrifying speed. In the streets of Lumina City, panic spread like wildfire. The Lumina, a species that had known peace for so long that the very concept of war was alien to them, found themselves face to face with an enemy that knew nothing but conquest. From the dropships emerged beings that defied description. Vaguely humanoid in shape, they seemed to be composed of living shadow, their forms constantly shifting and writhing. Where they touched, corruption spread, the beautiful crystal structures of the city turning black and crumbling. Back in the command center, Elara and her advisors watched in horror as reports flooded in from across the planet. The invaders, which the Lumina would come to call the Voidborn, were unstoppable. Lumina's limited defensive capabilities were swatted aside like insects. "We need help," Zephyr said, his voice breaking. "First speaker, we must call for aid." Elara nodded grimly. "Prepare the quantum entanglement communicator. We'll broadcast on all frequencies to every corner of the galaxy if we must." As the Voidborn armies advanced, Elara stood before the galaxy's most powerful transmission device. Her skin, once a vibrant tapestry of colors, now pulsed with a singular, desperate red. "To any who can hear this message," she began, her voice carrying across light years, "I am first speaker Elara of the Lumina. Our world, Astralis, is under attack by an unknown aggressor we call the Voidborn. We are a peaceful people, unprepared for war. Our defenses have fallen, our cities burn, our people." Her voice caught for a moment before she steadied herself. "Our people face extinction. We beg for aid from any civilization capable of standing against this darkness. Please, help us." The message repeated, echoing across the cosmic void as Astralis burned. Many heard the call. Some dismissed it as not their problem. Others, remembering the Lumina's contributions to galactic science and culture, mourned but felt powerless to intervene against such a formidable foe. But in a star system far from Astralis, on a blue-green planet called Earth, the message was received with a very different reaction. Admiral Helena Chen stood on the bridge of the UAS Horizon, flagship of humanity's fledgling interstellar fleet. Her weathered face was illuminated by the holographic display of Elara's desperate plea. "Location confirmed, Admiral," her XO reported. "The signal originates from the Astralis system, approximately 50 light-years from Earth." Chen's eyes narrowed. Humanity was still new to the galactic stage, viewed with a mixture of curiosity and wariness by older species. Their history of conflict made many uneasy, but it had also forged them into formidable warriors. "Get me a direct line to the Security Council," Chen ordered, her voice carrying the weight of the decision she knew lay ahead. "And begin prepping the fleet for long-range deployment. We may be the Lumina's only hope." As the crew rushed to carry out her orders, Chen replayed Elara's message. The Admiral's fists clenched at her sides. Humanity had fought its way to the stars, overcoming its own destructive nature to reach out into the cosmos. They knew the cost of war, the pain of watching their world burn. "Not again," Chen murmured. "Not if we can help it." The response from Earth was swift. Despite concerns about interfering in a conflict so far from home, the images of Astralis burning stirred something primal in the human psyche. They had clawed their way up from the mud, fought through their own dark ages, and emerged stronger. Now, faced with the prospect of watching another species suffer a fate they had so narrowly avoided, humanity made its choice. "The Security Council has given us the green light, Admiral," her XO announced, his voice tight with anticipation. "All fleet assets are at your disposal." Chen nodded, a grim smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Send word to all ships. We leave for Astralis in 1 hour. It's time to show the galaxy what humanity stands for." As the UEDF fleet prepared for its first true interstellar conflict, news spread across Earth. Humanity held its breath, knowing that their actions in the coming days would define their place in the galactic community. On Astralis, as hope dwindled and the Voidborn tightened their grip, a glimmer of light appeared in the darkness. Humanity was coming, and with them, the promise of salvation or extinction. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the future of 2 species and perhaps the entire galaxy. The luminous call had been answered, but whether it would be enough to stem the tide of darkness remained to be seen. As the human fleet jumped into hyperspace, Admiral Chen stood at the fore of the Horizon's bridge, her eyes fixed on the starfield ahead. "Hold on, Astralis," she whispered. "The cavalry's on its way." Humanity's bold response. The cavernous war room deep beneath New Geneva hummed with tension. Holographic displays flickered with real-time updates from the UEDF fleet as it hurtled through hyperspace towards Astralis. At the center of the storm stood Secretary General Amara Okafor, her dark eyes scanning the assembled leaders of Earth's nations. "Ladies and gentlemen," Okafor began, her voice cutting through the murmur of anxious conversation, "we stand at a crossroads. Our decision to answer the luminous call for aid may well be the most consequential choice humanity has made since we reached for the stars." A portly man with a shock of white hair leaned forward, his face creased with worry. "Madam Secretary, with all due respect, are we certain this is our fight? We know nothing of these Voidborn or their capabilities. We could be rushing headlong into our own destruction." Okafor's gaze hardened. "Senator Alvarez, I understand your concerns, but let me ask you this. If Earth were burning, if our people were facing extinction, would we not hope that someone, anyone, would answer our call?" The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling heavily on every shoulder. "We have an opportunity here," Okafor continued, her voice rising with passion, "to prove that humanity's place among the stars is not just as another conquering species, but as a force for good. Yes, there are risks, but the greater risk is in doing nothing, in allowing an entire civilization to be wiped out when we had the power to prevent it." As murmurs of agreement began to ripple through the room, a new voice cut in. And what are the diplomatic ramifications? All eyes turned to Ambassador Yuki Tanaka, Earth's representative to the Galactic Council. Many older species already view us with suspicion. This intervention could be seen as an act of aggression, a human power play. Okafor nodded, acknowledging the point. You're right, Ambassador, which is why we must be transparent in our intentions. Open a channel to the Galactic Council. It's time we made our position clear. Thousands of light-years away, aboard the UES Horizon, Admiral Chen received the transmission from Earth. A small smile played at the corners of her mouth as she read the Security Council's decision. Well, Her XO, Commander Darius Singh, asked, unable to contain his curiosity. Chen looked up, her eyes glinting with determination. We'll go for full intervention. Earth stands with Astralis. A cheer went up from the bridge crew, quickly stifled as professionalism reasserted itself. But the energy in the air was palpable. Humanity was about to announce itself on the galactic stage in a way no one could ignore. Comms, Chen barked, prepare a fleet-wide transmission, and get me a channel to Astralis. Let's let the Luna know help is on the way. As the UEDF fleet pushed their engines to the limit, final preparations were made. Marine dropships were loaded with troops and equipment. Fighters were fueled and armed. Every ship hummed with a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. In the depths of the horizon, a special unit prepared for deployment. The Void Walkers, an elite group of soldiers equipped with experimental phase shift technology, rammed through final equipment checks. Their mission: to infiltrate Voidborn strongholds and gather critical intelligence on the enemy's capabilities and weaknesses. Captain Zara Curry, leader of the Void Walkers, addressed her team. This is what we've trained for, people. We're about to go up against an enemy unlike anything humanity has ever faced. But remember this, we're fighting for more than just ourselves now. The fate of an entire species rests on our shoulders. Let's show the galaxy what humanity is made of. As the fleet neared Astralis, long-range sensors began picking up the chaos engulfing the Lumina homeworld. The Voidborn fleet, massive and ominous, hung in orbit like a shroud of death. Admiral Chen stood at the fore of the Horizon's bridge, her face set in grim determination. All ships, battle formations. Fighters, prepare to launch on my mark. This is it, people. We didn't come all this way to spectate. Let's bring the thunder. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace in a dazzling display of light and energy. For a moment, the battle around Astralis seemed to pause as both Voidborn and Lumina registered the arrival of this new force. Chen didn't wait for the enemy to recover from their surprise. All ships, weapons free. Cruisers, target those orbital platforms. Destroyers, run interference for our fighters. Marines, prepare for hot drops. Let's give these shadow bastards a taste of human hospitality. The space around Astralis erupted in chaos as human ships engaged the Voidborn. Advanced energy weapons lanced out, cutting through the dark holes of the invaders' ships. Human fighters darted between capital ships, their pilots' skills honed by centuries of aerial combat evolution, proving more than a match for the Voidborn's mechanical precision. On the surface of Astralis, the beleaguered Lumina watched in awe as streaks of light crisscrossed the sky. Dropships pierced the atmosphere, marine contingents deploying to key locations to establish beachheads and begin evacuation of Lumina civilians. In the shattered remains of Lumina City's central plaza, a group of survivors huddled in the ruins of what was once a grand library. The sounds of battle drew closer, but this time it was different. The relentless advance of the Voidborn seemed to have stopped. Suddenly, the air shimmered, and figures materialized out of thin air. The Lumina recoiled in fear, but these weren't the shadowy horrors of the Voidborn. These were bipedal beings in sleek armor, their visors retracting to reveal faces that, while aliened, showed expressions of concern and determination. Captain Corey stepped forward, her hands raised in a universal gesture of peace. "We're human," she said, her translator working overtime to convert her words into the melodic language of the Lumina. "We're here to help." Your first speaker sent a distress call, and Earth answered. One of the Lumina, his skin pulsing with a mixture of fear and hope, stepped forward. You came to help us. But why? We have never met your kind before." Kari smiled, a fierce, proud expression, because it was the right thing to do. "Now, let's get you folks to safety. We've got a planet to liberate." As human forces engaged the Voidborn on multiple fronts, the tide of battle began to shift. The invaders, so used to easy conquest against unprepared victims, found themselves facing an enemy that not only could fight back, but seemed to relish the challenge. As the battle raged across Astralis and in the space above, a new sense of hope began to spread. The Lumina, witnessing the fierce determination of their human allies, found courage they never knew they possessed. Together, human and Lumina fought side by side, pushing back against the darkness that had threatened to engulf them all. But even as victory seemed within reach, a chilling realization began to dawn. The Voidborn, for all their apparent alienness, were acting with purpose. This wasn't just an invasion, it was a hunt. And whatever they were hunting for, it was hidden somewhere on Astralis. The battle for Astralis had entered its most critical phase. The next few hours would determine not just the fate of the Lumina, but potentially the future of the entire galaxy. And at the center of it all stood humanity, a young species fighting with everything they had to prove that in the face of cosmic horrors, courage and determination could light the way forward. Turning the tide. The command center in the heart of Lumina City buzzed with a newfound energy. Humans and Lumina worked side by side, their differences forgotten in the face of a common enemy. At the center of it all stood Admiral Chen, her holographic form flickering slightly as she conferred with First Speaker Ilara and General Ramirez. "The resonance frequency discovery was the break we needed," Chen said, her voice tight with controlled excitement. "We've managed to push back their fleet, but they're regrouping. Whatever they're after, they're not giving up easily." Ilara's luminescent skin pulsed with a mix of hope and worry. But what could they possibly want? "Our world has no strategic value, no rare resources." Dr. Sato, who had been poring over data in the corner, suddenly looked up. "Maybe it's not about resources at all. First Speaker, your people are known for your scientific advancements, particularly in the field of quantum mechanics, correct?" Ilara's eyes widened in realization. "The Nexus Project," she whispered. Ramirez leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "What's the Nexus Project?" "It was theoretical," Ilara explained, her voice trembling slightly. "A device capable of manipulating the very fabric of space-time. We abandoned the research when we realized its potential for destruction." Chen's hologram flickered as she processed this information. "But you kept the research data." Ilara nodded slowly. "In our most secure vault, deep beneath the celestial archives. We thought it would be safe there." A grim silence fell over the room as the implications sank in. If the Voidborn got their hands on that research, they could potentially weaponize it, threatening not just Astralis, but the entire galaxy. Chen broke the silence, her voice filled with determination. "Then that's our primary objective. We need to secure that vault before the Voidborn can reach it." Ramirez nodded, already formulating a plan. "I'll assemble a strike team. We'll need Void Walkers for this." "Agreed," Chen replied. "I'm sending Captain Kori and her team your coordinates now. But we'll need more than just firepower for this. Dr. Sato, I want you on that team. Your expertise might be crucial." Sato's eyes widened, but she nodded resolutely. "Understood, Admiral." As the strike team assembled, the battle above Astralis reached a fever pitch. The human fleet, bolstered by their newfound ability to counter the Voidborn's facing, pressed their advantage. But the enemy's numbers seemed endless, pouring through tiers in space that grew larger by the hour. Aboard the UAS Horizon, Commander Singh monitored the battle with growing concern. "Admiral," he called out, long-range sensors are picking up massive energy distortions at the edge of the system. It looks like they're calling for reinforcements. Chen's jaw tightened. Estimated time of arrival? Singh's voice was grim. At current speeds, less than 6 hours. Chen nodded, her mind racing through scenarios. Relay this information to ground command. Tell Ramirez and Curry they're on a clock. We'll hold the line up here as long as we can. On the surface of Astralis, Captain Curry led her team through the war-torn streets of Lumina City. The once beautiful crystal structures lay shattered, their broken forms casting eerie shadows in the dim light of fires that raged unchecked. Ramirez nodded grimly. We're learning that the hard way, but we're also learning how to fight them. Speaking of which, he turned to a holographic display. We've identified several key Voidborn command nodes. If we can take them out, we might be able to disrupt their coordination. As Ilara and Ramirez pored over tactical data, a young Lumina scientist burst into the command center, his skin flashing with excitement. First speaker, General, we've made a breakthrough. Back in the research facility, Curry and her team were in the fight of their lives. The Voidborn came in waves, their shadowy forms twisting and reforming as they phased in and out of reality. How the hell do you kill something that's not fully here? Jackson growled, his phase rifle spitting bursts of energy that seemed to pass harmlessly through some Voidborn while dropping others. Curry gritted her teeth, her own weapon running hot from constant fire. Just keep shooting. Rodriguez, Chen, tell me you've got something. Working on it, Cap. Rodriguez called back. There's something here about resonance frequencies, but it's all in Lumina scientific notation. We need more time. Time's the one thing we don't have, Curry muttered. Then, making a split-second decision, she barked, fall back to the lab. We're making our stand there. Chen, rig those servers to blow. If we can't take this data with us, we sure as hell aren't leaving it for the enemy. As the Voidwalkers retreated, setting up a defensive perimeter around the lab, Curry couldn't help but wonder if this would be their last stand. They'd signed up to be the tip of the spear, but against an enemy like this, even the sharpest blade could shatter. In orbit, the space battle had devolved into a brutal slugfest. Human ingenuity and advanced technology clashed against the Voidborn's otherworldly abilities and sheer numbers. The void was lit by the death throes of ships from both sides, their final moments etched in fire against the backdrop of Astralis. Admiral Chen watched as another cruiser, the UES Intrepid, succumbed to a concentrated Voidborn assault. Her fists clenched at her sides, knuckles white. Status on the Lumina evacuation, she demanded. Singh consulted his display. 60% complete, Admiral, but at this rate. He didn't need to finish the thought. Chen knew they were running out of time and options. The Voidborn fleet, despite heavy losses, seemed endless. For every ship they destroyed, 2 more seemed to phase into existence. Ma'am, a young lieutenant called out, her voice tinged with both excitement and disbelief. We're picking up a transmission from the surface. It's Dr. Sato. Chen's head snapped around. Put her through. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the disheveled but grinning face of Dr. Yuki Sato, Earth's leading xenophysicist. Admiral, she began without preamble, we've cracked it. The Voidborn, their phasing ability, it's all based on quantum field manipulation. But here's the kicker, it has a specific resonance frequency. Chen's mind raced, immediately grasping the implications. You mean we can disrupt it? Sato nodded vigorously. Better. With the right modulation, we can lock them into phase, make them fully corporeal and vulnerable. For the first time since the battle began, a fierce grin spread across Chen's face. Send the specs to our weapons teams, Priority Alpha, and get me Captain Curry on the ground. Her Void Walkers are about to live up to their name. As the human fleet began to modify their weapons, the tide of battle slowly began to turn. Voidborn ships, once maddeningly elusive, found themselves unable to phase out of reality. The space around Australis lit up with renewed fury as humanity pressed its sudden advantage. On the ground, Curry and her team, their backs literally against the wall, received the update. With grim determination, they adjusted their weapons and prepared for one final push. "All right, Voidwalkers," Curry addressed her team, her voice steady despite the dire situation. "Looks like the eggheads came through. Let's show these shadow puppets what happens when they pick a fight with humanity. On my mark." The lab erupted in a symphony of energy discharges as the Voidwalkers unleashed their newly modified weapons. Voidborn attackers, caught off guard by their sudden vulnerability, fell in droves. For the first time since the invasion began, the shadows were retreating. As Ilara and Ramirez pored over tactical data, a young luminous scientist burst into the command center, his skin flashing with excitement. "First speaker, General, we've made a breakthrough." Back in the research facility, Curry and her team were in the fight of their lives. The Voidborn came in waves, their shadowy forms twisting and reforming as they phased in and out of reality. "How the hell do you kill something that's not fully here?" Jackson growled, his phase rifle spitting bursts of energy that seemed to pass harmlessly through some Voidborn while dropping others. Curry gritted her teeth, her own weapon running hot from constant fire. "Just keep shooting. Rodriguez, Chen, tell me you've got something." "Working on it, Cap," Rodriguez called back. "There's something here about resonance frequencies, but it's all in lunar scientific notation. We need more time." "Time's the one thing we don't have," Curry muttered. Then, making a split-second decision, she barked, "Fall back to the lab. We're making our stand there. Chen, rig those servers to blow. If we can't take this data with us, we sure as hell aren't leaving it for the enemy." As the Voidwalkers retreated, setting up a defensive perimeter around the lab, Curry couldn't help but wonder if this would be their last stand. They'd signed up to be the tip of the spear, but against an enemy like this, even the sharpest blade could shatter. In orbit, the space battle had devolved into a brutal slugfest. Human ingenuity and advanced technology clashed against the Voidborn's otherworldly abilities and sheer numbers. The void was lit by the death throes of ships from both sides, their final moments etched in fire against the backdrop of Australis. Admiral Chen watched as another cruiser, the UES Intrepid, succumbed to a concentrated Voidborn assault. Her fists clenched at her sides, knuckles white. "Status on the Lumina evacuation," she demanded. Singh consulted his display. 60% complete, Admiral. But at this rate, he didn't need to finish the thought. Chen knew they were running out of time and options. The Voidborn fleet, despite heavy losses, seemed endless. For every ship they destroyed, 2 more seemed to phase into existence. "Ma'am," a young lieutenant called out, her voice tinged with both excitement and disbelief. "We're picking up a transmission from the surface. It's Dr. Saito." Chen's head snapped around. "Put her through." The holographic display flickered to life, showing the disheveled but grinning face of Dr. Yuki Sato, Earth's leading xenophysicist. "Admiral," she began without preamble, "we've cracked it. The Voidborn, their facing ability, it's all based on quantum field manipulation. But here's the kicker, it has a specific resonance frequency." Chen's mind raced, immediately grasping the implications. "You mean we can disrupt it?" Sato nodded vigorously. "Better. With the right modulation, we can lock them into phase, make them fully corporeal and vulnerable." For the first time since the battle began, a fierce grin spread across Chen's face. "Send the specs to our weapons teams. Priority Alpha, and get me Captain Curry on the ground. Her Voidwalkers are about to live up to their name." As the human fleet began to modify their weapons, the tide of battle slowly began to turn. Voidborn ships, once maddeningly elusive, found themselves unable to phase out of reality. The space around Australis lit up with renewed fury as humanity pressed its sudden advantage. On the ground, Curry and her team, their backs literally against the wall, received the update. With grim determination, they adjusted their weapons and prepared for one final push. "All right, Voidwalkers," Kuri addressed her team, her voice steady despite the dire situation. "Looks like the eggheads came through. Let's show these shadow puppets what happens when they pick a fight with humanity. On my mark, mark." The lab erupted in a symphony of energy discharges as the Voidwalkers unleashed their newly modified weapons. Voidborn attackers, caught off guard by their sudden vulnerability, fell in droves. For the first time since the invasion began, the shadows were retreating. Aboard the Horizon, Admiral Chen coordinated the complex dance of ships and troops. "Status report," she barked, her eyes never leaving the tactical display. Commander Singh's fingers flew over his console. "We've established multiple secure zones on the surface, Admiral. Evacuation of Lumina civilians is underway. Our forces are pushing the Voidborn back in key sectors," but he hesitated. "Spit it out, Commander," Chen growled. "But we're taking casualties, ma'am. These Voidborn, they're unlike anything we've ever encountered. Our weapons are effective, but their ability to seemingly phase in and out of normal space is giving our troops hell." Chen nodded grimly. She'd expected this. Humanity might have the element of surprise and a technological edge, but the Voidborn had numbers and an alien nature that defied conventional military doctrine. "Keep pushing," she ordered. "We need to buy time for the evacuation and find a weakness we can exploit, and get me a secure line to the Lumina leadership. It's time we coordinated our efforts." As the battle raged on, a new chapter in galactic history was being written. Humanity, the upstart species, had thrown itself into the fray against an enemy that threatened not just one world, but potentially all of civilized space. The Voidborn had expected easy prey on Astralis. Instead, they found themselves facing the full fury of a species that had clawed its way up from a single world, driven by an indomitable spirit and a fierce determination to prove their worth among the stars. The war for Astralis had only just begun, but already the galaxy was watching. Humanity had answered the call. Now they had to win. The battle for Astralis. The once pristine crystalline landscape of Astralis now bore the scars of war. Plumes of smoke rose from shattered cities, and the air crackled with energy discharges as human forces clashed with the Voidborn invaders. In the midst of this chaos, Captain Zara Kuri and her Voidwalkers moved like ghosts through the ruins of what was once a Lumina research facility. "Stay frosty, people," Kuri whispered into her comm. "We're looking for anything that might give us an edge against these shadow-loving bastards." As they swept through abandoned laboratories, Sergeant Eva Rodriguez called out, "Cap, you need to see this." Kuri moved swiftly to Rodriguez's position, her eyes widening at the sight before her. A Voidborn lay motionless on an examination table, its form seeming to shift and writhe even in death. "Is that what I think it is?" Lieutenant Akira Chen asked, his voice hushed. Kuri nodded grimly. "Looks like the Lumina were trying to understand their enemy. Let's see if they learned anything useful." As the team scoured the lab for data, a distant explosion rocked the building. "Heads up," Corporal Jackson warned from his overwatch position. "We've got incoming. Lots of them." Kari's mind raced. They needed more time to gather intel, but they couldn't risk being cornered. "Rodriguez, Chen, download everything you can. Jackson, Patel with me. We're going to buy some time." The three soldiers moved to defensive positions, their phase shift generators humming as they prepared to meet the Voidborn assault. Meanwhile, high above Astralis, Admiral Chen watched the battle unfold from the bridge of the UAS Horizon. The initial shock of humanity's arrival had worn off, and the Voidborn were adapting, pressing their numerical advantage. "Admiral," Commander Singh reported, his voice tight, "we're losing ground in sectors 3 and 7. The Voidborn are using some kind of spatial distortion tech. Our ships can't get a solid lock." Chen's eyes narrowed. "Redirect the 4th and 9th fighter wings to provide close support. and get me aligned to Dr. Sato in R&D. We need to find a counter to their facing ability fast. As Chen coordinated the space battle, on the surface of Astralis, a different kind of encounter was taking place. In a makeshift command center established in the ruins of Luminous City, First Speaker Elara met face-to-face with Major General Victor Ramirez of the UEDF. Elara's luminescent skin pulsed with a mixture of gratitude and concern as she addressed the human officer. General Ramirez, words cannot express our thanks for your intervention, but I must ask, why? Why risk so much for a species you've never met? Ramirez's weathered face softened. First Speaker, on Earth we have a saying, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. We couldn't stand by and watch your world burn. Elara's 4 eyes blinked in rapid succession, a sign of deep emotion among the Lumina. Your people are as brave as they are kind, but I fear the cost to you may be too high. The Voidborn, they are unlike anything we've ever encountered. Stay sharp, Kuri warned as they approached the Celestial Archives. Intel suggests heavy Voidborn presence in this sector. As if on cue, the air around them shimmered, and a squad of Voidborn materialized. But this time the Void Walkers were ready. Their modified weapons sang out, locking the shadowy figures into corporeal form. Push through, Curry shouted, her own rifle spitting death at the enemy. We need to get to that vault. The team fought their way into the archives, a massive structure that seemed to defy gravity. Inside, they found Dr. Sato and a small group of Lumina scientists waiting for them. The vault is 5 levels down, one of the Lumina explained, his skin flickering with anxiety. But the Voidborn, they're already trying to breach it. Kaori nodded grimly. Then we better move fast. Doc, stay close. We might need that big brain of yours. As they descended into the bowels of the archives, the sounds of battle grew louder. The air itself seemed to thicken, reality wavering at the edges of their vision. What the hell is happening? Rodriguez asked, her voice tight with tension. Dr. Sato's eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and scientific curiosity. The Nexus research, if they've activated even a prototype, it could be destabilizing local spacetime. They burst into the vault level to find a scene of chaos. Voidborn swarmed around a central chamber, their shadowy forms twisting in ways that hurt the eye to look at. At the center of it all, a device pulsed with otherworldly energy. That's it, Dr. Sato shouted over the din of battle. The Nexus prototype. We can't let them take it. Kari didn't hesitate. Void Walkers, engage. Protection detail on the dock. We need to shut that thing down. What followed was a battle unlike any in human history. The Void Walkers, their phase shift technology pushed to its limits, danced between dimensions as they fought. Dr. Sato, protected by a ring of human and Lumen defenders, worked feverishly to understand and deactivate the Nexus device. Above, the space battle took a dire turn. The Voidborn reinforcements arrived earlier than expected, their massive ships tearing holes in reality as they emerged. All ships, defensive formation Delta, Chen ordered, her voice steady despite the odds. We need to buy more time. On the ground in the vault, Dr. Sato's voice rang out with sudden clarity. I've got it. Captain, I need to reverse the polarity of the quantum flux. Curry, in the midst of hand-to-hand combat with a Voidborn commander, grunted, in English, Doc. We can use their own technology against them. Sato shouted back. Create a quantum barrier that will lock them out of this dimension entirely. It was a desperate gamble, but they were out of options. As the Void Walkers provided cover, Dr. Sato and the Lumina scientists worked frantically to modify the Nexus device. In orbit, the human fleet fought with everything they had, ships sacrificing themselves to buy precious minutes. The horizon shuddered under repeated impacts, but Chen stood firm, coordinating the defense with iron determination. Just when all seemed lost, when the weight of the Voidborn assault threatened to overwhelm them, A blinding light erupted from the surface of Astralis. A wave of energy, visible even from space, expanded outward at impossible speed. Where it touched the Voidborn ships, they simply vanished, torn back to whatever dark dimension they had come from. In the vault, Curry and her team watched in awe as the Voidborn around them were ripped away by an unseen force. Dr. Sato stood by the modified Nexus device, her face a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. "We did it," she breathed. "We actually did it." As the energy wave expanded into space, engulfing the entire Voidborn fleet, she has erupted across human and lunar channels alike. Against all odds, in the face of an enemy that by all rights should have crushed them, they had emerged victorious. But as the initial euphoria faded, new questions arose. What were the long-term effects of the Nexus device's activation? Had they truly seen the last of the Voidborn? And how would this victory change humanity's place in the galactic community? As the dust settled on Astralis, one thing was clear: the universe would never be the same again. Humanity had proven itself on the cosmic stage, and the alliance forged in the heat of battle between humans and Lumina promised to shape the future of galactic civilization. The battle was over, but a new chapter in cosmic history was just beginning. A new galactic order, the twin suns of Astralis, rose over a changed world. Where once crystalline spires had reached for the stars, now stood the scaffolding of reconstruction. The scars of war were still fresh, but amidst the rubble, hope loomed like the bioluminescent flowers that had begun to reclaim the war-torn landscape. In the makeshift headquarters of the Joint Human-Lumina Recovery Effort, Admiral Helena Chen stood before a holographic display of the system. Her weathered face showed the strain of the past weeks, but her eyes gleamed with quiet pride. "The last of the energy signatures have dissipated," she reported to the assembled leaders. "It seems the Nexus device's effects were thorough." First speaker Elara, her luminescent skin pulsing with a mix of relief and lingering anxiety, spoke up. "And what of the device itself?" Dr. Yuki Sato stepped forward, dark circles under her eyes testament to sleepless nights of study. "We've contained it in a quantum vault of our own design. The research data has been encrypted and split between our two species. Never again will such power rest in one place." General Ramirez nodded approvingly. "Good. The last thing we need is some other cosmic horror coming to our doorstep looking for it." As the meeting continued, discussing reconstruction efforts and security measures, Captain Zara Curry found herself drawn to one of the vast windows overlooking the Lumina capital. The city was a tapestry of destruction and renewal, with human and Lumina working side by side to rebuild. "Quite a view, isn't it?" a voice said beside her. Turned to find Cyan Zephyr, the young Lumina scientist who had first detected the anomaly nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Your people are resilient. I've seen worlds torn apart by less, never to recover." Zephyr's skin shimmered with a pattern that Corey had come to recognize as thoughtful. "We had help," he said simply. "Your people, you came when no one else would. You fought for a world that wasn't your own." "It was the right thing to do," Corey replied, echoing the words she'd spoken what felt like a lifetime ago. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the command table. A communications officer, her eyes wide, called out, "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council." The room fell silent. Since the battle's end, the Council had been conspicuously quiet, leaving humanity and the Lumina to wonder how their actions would be perceived on the galactic stage. Admiral Chen straightened her uniform. "Put it through." The holographic display shifted, revealing the diverse forms of the Council representatives. At their center stood High Councillor Xandrath, his multifaceted eyes unreadable. "Greetings, people of Earth and Astralis." Andrath began, his voice resonating with ancient authority. "We have observed the recent events in your sector with great interest." Chen stepped forward, her chin held high. "High Councillor, on behalf of Earth and Astralis, we," raised a hand, silencing her. "Your actions were unexpected, Humanity, a species barely a century into its interstellar age, risking everything for a people not your own. And the Lumina, peaceful scientists standing against cosmic horrors. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the assembled leaders. You have upset the balance of power in this galaxy. Many on this council feared your potential for violence, humanity. They saw in you echoes of ancient threats best left forgotten. The humans in the room tensed, ready for condemnation. But then, to their shock, Zandrath's expression shifted into something that might have been a smile. Instead, you have shown us something we had almost forgotten: courage, selflessness, the power of unity in the face of darkness. His voice softened. Perhaps it is we who have grown complacent, content to watch from afar as younger races struggle. First speaker Ilara stepped forward, her voice filled with quiet dignity. High Counselor, what does this mean for our peoples? Zandrath's next words would reshape the galaxy. It means, First Speaker, that the Council extends an invitation to both Earth and Astralis, not as protectorates or junior members, but as full partners in shaping the future of our galactic community. The room erupted in gasps and exclamations. Humanity, in one fell swoop, had gone from newcomers to major players on the galactic stage. The Lumina, long respected for their scientific contributions, but often overlooked in matters of policy, now found themselves elevated to new prominence. As the implications sank in, Admiral Chen found her voice. High Counselor, we are honored. But may I ask, why? Zandrath's multifaceted eyes seemed to peer into the depths of time itself. Because, Admiral, the Voidborn were not an isolated threat. They were a harbinger. There are older, darker things stirring in the void between galaxies. If we are to face what comes, we will need the courage of humanity and the wisdom of the Lumina. The transmission ended, leaving the room in stunned silence. It was Kori who finally spoke, her voice cutting through the tension. Well, she said with a wry smile, I guess we've got our work cut out for us. Her words broke the spell. The room filled with a mixture of laughter and excited chatter as humans and Lumina alike began to grapple with their new reality. In the days and weeks that followed, the face of the galaxy changed. The Human-Lumina alliance became a beacon of hope and progress. Earth's shipyards worked overtime, producing a new generation of vessels that combined human ingenuity with Lumina quantum technology. Astralis, once a hidden jewel, became a center of galactic diplomacy and scientific advancement. But even as they celebrated their victory and newfound status, both species remembered the price paid. Memorials were erected on both worlds, honoring those who had fallen in defense of not just Astralis, but the very ideals of courage and compassion. And in quiet moments, when the weight of their new responsibilities pressed heavily, the heroes of the Battle of Astralis would look to the stars with a mixture of wonder and determination. For they knew that out there, in the vast expanse of the cosmos, both marvels and horrors awaited. Humanity had answered the call, proving their worth among the stars. The Lumina had found strength they never knew they possessed. Together, they stood ready to face whatever the universe might throw at them next. As Admiral Chen had said in her address to the combined fleet before their return voyage to Earth, today, we are no longer just Earthlings or Lumina. We are the guardians of the light against the encroaching dark, and whatever comes, we will face it together. The galaxy watched and waited, for a new age had dawned, an age of unity, of courage, and of hope, the age of the Human-Lumina alliance.